Allow. Okay. That's weird. Okay, take two.
That's how it always
The
is.
tech monsters for the last 2 months have been crazy.
Yep.
So I am excited to have Lisa. How do you say your last name?
It's
Nehring?
Nehring.
Nehring.
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm excited to have her on. I love doing interviews. I just absolutely love doing interviews. And why don't you just start out, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Yeah. So my name's Lisa Nehring, and I currently live in South Dakota. I've been married for almost 40 years, coming up in a couple months. We have 5 kids. I like to say I have one husband, 2 graduate degrees, 5 kids, and a black belt in homeschooling. So we homeschooled for 30 years. And in 2018, I started True North Academy. And 2 years ago, we acquired It's Not That Hard to Homeschool. And so as my kids have grown up and moved out, it seems like we've added a whole bunch of other kids from around the world with these programs, and it's been so much fun. So we have about 25 teachers from around the world and students from around the world, and offer a full 6th through 12th grade live online and self-paced classes. We just started a dual degree program so students can earn an entire bachelor's degree while they're going through high school. It's crazy. It's crazy, but it's
Nice.
true, for debt free. And so we're really like on the cutting edge of education. Alternative ed has been my deal. I wrote a master's thesis on why parents homeschool way back in the 90s. And so I've just been in education my whole life. And I just, it's so funny. Once you go down one little narrow path, all the other paths narrow with you, like health and,
Yes.
how you read the Bible and how you interact with people and fellowship and, all the things. It's a whole lifestyle, and it's not just homeschooling is a lifestyle. It's a whole lifestyle.
It is. It is.
Yeah.
I absolutely agree.
Yeah.
Starting to homeschool, I really had no idea the can of worms that
Yeah.
we were coming up with. We started in 1995 whenever our oldest was 4,
Yeah.
because I wanted that head start for
Yes.
me.
Yeah.
I had no idea what I was doing.
Yeah.
A year before, I hadn't even heard of homeschooling, you know, and even though I had homeschooled my aunt, who's just 9 months younger than me, she's special needs, and I had basically homeschooled her for a little
Yeah.
while her parents were having some medical issues and stuff. She stayed with us, and I helped her with her school work.
Right. Yes.
So, but it just never clicked.
You were actually
Homeschooling.
doing a thing.
I was doing a thing.
Yes.
But yeah, I just, oh my goodness. And I love connecting with
Yeah.
people like this. Yeah, we were the first homeschoolers in our county.
Yeah.
And so that made it kind of difficult
Yeah.
because everybody out here, it's a very rural area. If you're from South Dakota, you probably have an idea.
Yeah. Mhm.
We're out here on the Great Plains, and everybody works for the school or has somebody in their family that works for the school,
Yeah.
and I came from a family of teachers.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it
Yes.
was a thing. But after just a few years, our oldest is very auditory. And since we have to drive so far to do things, I would stick in like Diana Warring
Yes.
or, some of these audios, and she would just
Yeah.
soak it in, and then she'd regurgitate that for everybody. And
Yes.
everybody would be like, "Oh my goodness, you're doing such a great job."
Yeah.
All
No,
I
it's
was doing was sticking a cassette tape in there.
we had those cassette tapes. She makes so many references to
Oh,
dogs. We called it jokingly in our house the canine history of the world. And then I met her in New Mexico, and I mentioned it to her, and she just died. She's got
she's
such
so
a great
fun.
sense of
She's
humor.
so fun.
She really is. Those tapes were so fantastic. And then
Mhm.
we had a house fire in 2009, and we didn't have much left over after that, but we had the story of the world CDs, and my kids, my younger 2, listened to those so much during that year of out of our house, rebuilding, blah, blah, blah. They had parts of it memorized.
Yeah.
And they still know so much about history. So, those auditory kids, I'm so jealous.
Yeah.
That's not me. Not me.
Yeah,
I listen to
me
them too.
neither. I'm visual. I've got to see it, but
Yeah.
my oldest can just still
Yeah.
just quote the stuff. It's
Yes.
amazing. And
Yeah.
she just still soaks up history. It's
Yeah.
wonderful.
I
History
love it.
fascinates me, but it doesn't stick like I
Yeah.
wish it would.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a I, yeah, I did a interview on somebody else's podcast yesterday, and homeschooling is an adventure,
Yeah, for sure.
and it's kind of like Bilbo and the Hobbit. Adventures aren't always fun. Sometimes they're hard.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're
Yes.
overwhelming,
Yeah.
but it's worth it.
Yeah.
It's so worth it.
Absolutely. Yeah. It is. It is so worth it. I think a lot of times, I know I felt this way too. If you do this, then you will get that. And I think we can fall into that with homeschooling or natural health or homesteading or whatever. If we do this, we'll get this outcome. And I think really you have to focus on the if you do this part, and the outcomes are not your pay grade. I mean, it's not up
Right.
to you how your kids turn out or how the homestead turns out or how your health turns out. There's things in your control, and there's a whole lot of life and circumstance that comes along, and the enemy who's just out to knock us out. And so we have to keep those two in balance. Like, you can still homeschool even if it doesn't end up the way you idealize, and it be worth every single minute of that time invested. So yeah.
Yes. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I could not have said that better. And your pay grade, that's key,
Yeah.
because the biggest question I get is,
Yeah.
how do you do it all?
Yeah.
And my answer is, I don't.
Right.
You
You
know,
can't.
I do the best I can, and then I rely on God to take over the rest of it. And
Yes.
that is the only way to do anything in life. There's no balance. The
Yeah.
only balance is I take care of what I can take care of and let him take care of the rest of it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Preach. I do think too, this whole idea, God doesn't give you more than you can handle. We had a house fire in 2009. I was just revisiting this because of an online thread, actually. And 4 days later, my 47-year-old sister died. And then that same year, my dad passed away, both unexpectedly. And we often get more than we can handle, because if we didn't, it would be on our strength. But really, God is saying, it's too much for you. You're just this weak little child. So I've got it. I can handle it. You just keep walking and don't despair. And we have to just keep that at the forefront, no matter what we're doing, whether it's homeschooling or anything else, because life is so much more than we can handle.
It
So
is.
much of the time.
Absolutely. We
Yeah.
we had the same thing happen in 2016, 2017. My mother passed away. There was a huge fire. Our house was miraculously saved, but it devastated my husband's business. And then his dad passed away, and there was just one thing after
Yeah.
another. And he does that in times like that. I mean, our family just came together in an amazing way. Our relationships grew. We lost almost everything,
Wow.
but we gained it all.
Yeah. Oh,
you know?
that's a sweet testimony. It's still hard. I mean, thinking about it sometimes too, like my sister's been gone for 15 or 16 years, but when I share it, I still get choked up. Like,
Mhm.
oh, it just still, we're just jars of clay. It's really what it is.
Yeah. Yeah. And looking forward to that reunion, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely looking forward
Yeah.
to that reunion.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so we've got Passover coming up
Yeah.
pretty
Yes.
soon. And I know some of my people have got lots of questions about the feasts and stuff. And I've been publishing some books, just the basics on an introduction of what these are about.
Yeah.
But you've got a thing
Well,
coming out. So tell us what
yeah.
you've got.
So we are about to publish a Passover unit study, and it's really simple. Yours might be more complex than ours, but we've had a Sukkot unit study for years, and we've given it away. It's been super popular, and we have a biblical feasts and festivals that Rabbi Abraham Fisher teaches live from Israel every fall at True North Academy, and he is a Orthodox Jewish rabbi, and he teaches live from Israel. So he knows that True North is coming from a Judeo-Christian point of view, and he's not messianic. He's not trying to convert us. We're not trying to convert him. He always jokes, "You pray for us," and we do, because we just love him so much. But he also teaches our Hebrew classes. So we have had so much interest in the biblical feasts and festivals, and it's something our family has practiced for well over a decade, maybe 2 decades at this point. And we started with Sukkot, and it really has to do with my husband because he's a Bible nerd and he just got really into it. So we started celebrating Sukkot, and it's such a lovely celebration. It's such a beautiful fall celebration of harvest and thankfulness and God tabernacling, God coming and being with us. And then we added in Passover, and we've done many, many Passovers at this point. Sometimes we've invited people to our house and had a Christian Passover. Sometimes we've had Jewish friends who have invited us to their house to do a Jewish Passover, or Seder. And then sometimes we've done it with big community groups. Like there was a big Messianic fellowship in Omaha that we would go down and do Seder dinner with them. But Passover just is really an awareness of getting the sin out of your life and preparing the way for God to deliver you. And some of the traditions I really love about Passover is you're in that moment. You're talking about God delivered me. It's not God delivered them way back then. It's God delivers us
Yes.
now. It's current. It's active. He's here. We're there with him. And there's this beautiful song in Passover called Dayenu, and it means it would have been enough. If God had only done this, it would have been enough. And I'm getting a little choked up just talking about some of the losses, like, you think that you're going to do this and you're going to have this beautiful thing at the end, and maybe it doesn't work out that way. But if you did that, it would have been enough, because what God does is always enough. And so I think just that yearly tradition of having this very symbolic meal where you're looking at the bitter herbs and the bitterness of being in captivity, and you're really remembering that God has this beautiful promise that he has made a way for every one of us, not just individually and not just collectively, but both individually and collectively. Like you and I, together, we get to participate in that. And so I don't know. I love the biblical feasts and festivals. They become really meaningful in our home, maybe even more so than some of the traditional. I don't know. I like Halloween. We never really did much with that, for so many different reasons. But Sukkot is such a sweet time, and Passover too. It really, especially there's some Christian Haggadahs that you can get free online.
Mhm.
And the Haggadah is the little scripture verses that
The
the
booklet.
yeah,
Yeah.
the booklet that you go through when you're doing the Seder meal, that are really powerful. And you read a lot of scripture throughout it. It just pulls it all together. So it's this cohesive understanding of this festival that Jesus actually participated in.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. We've been doing it for 25 years ish,
Wow. Yeah.
and it's never the same from year
Yeah.
to year.
Yeah.
Never the same. What is your answer to people that say, "Oh, we don't need to do that. The old laws passed away"?
Oh, I think again, it's both and. The Old Testament is 2/3 of the Bible, 2/3. And you cannot understand the New Testament until you really dig into the Old Testament. You just can't, because
You
it's
just
both
can't.
and. Jesus came out of that Hebraic tradition. And it is such a rich and varied tradition that if we skip out on that, we're just really getting a whitewashed, anemic flavor version of the gospel, where it is and we're grafted in. We get to partake fully in it. It's not
Yes.
like that's for the Jews, and then we get this little
We
piece
don't
of
have
here.
to. We get to.
Yes, 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 exactly. I just think it makes all of the Bible come alive. It just,
It does.
God's been preparing the way since the beginning of time, and all roads lead to the gospel of Christ. And so, the Jewish traditions and the feasts and festivals is just another way to say, hey, remember, I called you by name, you personally. I called your family. I called your country. I called my people. Come
Yeah.
participate with me in this meal, because we're going to have this big party at some point all together.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Marriage supper of the Lamb.
Yeah.
Looking forward to it.
Yes.
Yeah. And I try to remind people too that what is in Israel is only a few of the tribes right now.
Yeah.
There were
Yeah.
12 tribes,
Yeah.
and the rest were scattered all over.
Yeah.
So you don't know that you are not Hebrew.
Yeah.
And if you're saved, you are Hebrew.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting. We have a very good rabbi friend who comes over. We see him every now and then. He said, in Israel right now, it is a fulfillment of prophecy. There's a street in Israel with a Zechariah scripture on it that says, I will call my people back and your children will run through the streets of Israel. And he's like, you sit in that street and the children are running through the streets in Israel. And literally throughout history, no ancient civilization who was dispersed ever returned, ever. But Israel did. And they have their language, which that never ever happens. And they have their traditions. I mean, it is truly, the state of Israel is truly a modern day miracle that we get to see and participate in if we choose to. Like, that's no small thing. That's fulfillment of Old Testament scripture. So it's a big deal.
Yeah. We've gotten so much. If you ask our children what their favorite holidays are, they will give you one of those.
Yeah.
They will give you Passover or Feast of Tabernacles or Feast of Trumpets, and I think it's just whichever was the last one, and they're all adults now. Whichever was the last one is the favorite, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because they're so much fun.
Yeah.
Oh
They
my
are.
goodness. And speaking of the health, you were bringing up the health, and whenever you start homeschooling, homesteading, either way, you start thinking about the health because
No.
you're wanting focus for yourself and your children for the homeschooling. You're
Mhm.
homesteading because you want the natural
Yeah.
foods and stuff, and you just start putting the pieces together and realizing how important gut health and all of that kind of stuff is to us being able to function,
Yeah.
right? And then we have the bitter herbs and Passover.
Yeah.
And there's this big thing blowing up all over the internet now about parasites.
Oh.
And I didn't know if you had made that connection yet.
Well, I hadn't, but okay, we live on this acreage. It's an old South Dakota homestead that was just in shambles when we moved out here, and it's actually this beautiful property now. But it was overrun with wormwood. Wormwood and nettle, which you can do a
Really?
lot with from an organic herbal point of view. But when you drive onto the property, it would smell because wormwood is a toxic weed, actually. Like all the other plants around it die. It's very invasive, but they used to use it for deworming animals.
Hmm.
And I think the old homestead had a crop of it and it went wild, and then the
That's
same with the stinging
interesting.
nettle. Yeah, because there was also plantain, which they used to grow in crops in England, and you can use it like salads. So that's how old this homestead is. Okay. But I do think there is true connection between bitter herbs and parasites because nobody likes bitter anything, including parasites. So it makes total sense.
It does. It makes total sense. And you're going for a whole week without leaven,
Yeah.
without yeast. And
Yes.
so many people have yeast overgrowth these
Yes.
days, and candida problems and stuff. So
Yeah.
you're going that whole week without
Yeah.
the yeast.
Mhm.
And so we do take a wormwood and black walnut
Yeah.
supplement
Yeah.
during that week to help with the cleansing.
Interesting. Okay,
Yeah.
that's interesting. Yeah, so I have been on a carnivore diet for just over
Trying.
a year and a month at this point. And I have been completely carnivore. So I've eaten beef, and some, like, hardly any fish, a little bit of chicken, very occasionally cheese, and that's pretty much it. And I don't really eat cheese as a group. It's more like a condiment, very occasionally, because I've had some health problems I cannot sort out, like no matter what I've done or not done. And the carnivore has actually, I've gone from on a pain scale of 4 to 6 every single day with a couple injuries and some genetic issues to like a 0 to 1.
Oh,
And
nice.
that's from going and I'm not saying it's a miracle thing because we were into functional medicine and I did all the supplements and blah, 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 blah. Very expensive, not demure. You know what I mean? Like it
Hmm.
just, but this has been a solution. So I think I love bread and challah bread and all the things, but I do think with the food supply being, it's big pharma, it's big ag. And so there's a lot of compromises with that because you have to. It's like big government education. You cannot, it has to be lockstep. It has to be industrialized. you cannot look at every seed or every student as its own individual thing when you're
Mhm.
doing mass quantities. And so I think just really being aware of, there's some great alternative options out there. And I'm not saying go carnivore for everybody. Like nobody else in my family is carnivore. It's just me. So I make all this food I don't eat. I mean, I feel like that's mom life too, right?
Yeah, it just is, isn't it?
My
It
full
just
adult life.
well, my husband is doing it with me, and
Good.
we're kind of there's a few things that we waver on.
Yeah.
But we're trying. We're trying. I've lupus is what
Yeah.
I we finally figured out that I was struggling with.
Wow.
So it is helping
That's a big
immensely.
thing.
So yeah.
And I do think for autoimmune issues, wow, they're just really hard to identify, number one, and really finding somebody who will take you seriously instead of just like it's all in your head or you need to exercise more. Because
Mhm.
that's been part of my problem is because some of the genetic issues I have, exercising more and harder actually is debilitating to what I'm
Makes it
struggling
worse.
with.
Yeah.
And so if I could just, and I'm an all in kind of girl. So if I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it till somebody knocks over, you know what I mean?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
But just having to step back and go, okay, we can do 20 minutes. We don't have to do an hour and a half. Like that's really,
Right. Yeah.
yeah. So
I gotcha. Yeah, because I
there's,
would take the 2-3 mile walk
yeah,
and then couldn't function for a week.
yeah,
You
yeah.
know, and it's
And,
like,
and that, and lupus is tough, really tough. Yeah.
mhm, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I hope you find some relief with it. I mean, I'm
I
excited to hear
already
it.
am.
Yeah.
I'm much more active than I was a couple of years ago. So
Yeah.
that's
Yay.
awesome. Yeah.
Awesome.
I
Yeah.
just I you find one little rabbit hole and you start digging, and
Yeah.
then you find another little rabbit hole and you start
Yeah.
digging, and you just end up in so many different places. And
Yes.
once the Lord leads you like down that narrow path,
Mhm.
you know, you don't know where you're going.
That is for sure. Yes. I think that too, like, we have 5 kids, but I think if I had gone back to work, if I had not been homeschooling, we would not have had 5 kids. You know what I mean? Like, I wouldn't
Oh
have had
yeah.
the time. There's only just
Yeah.
so much time in the day. But
Yeah.
when you're homeschooling, you have time to have more kids, to have more people. I mean, it just
Yeah,
makes
to
it
have more
space.
relationship, just
Yeah,
period.
exactly.
Out here, like I said, we're very, very rural.
Yeah,
So when I would ride the bus, and they've consolidated schools even more. So there's
yeah.
only 2 public schools in our county, and our county
Wow.
is bigger than some states, you know.
Wow.
So you're on the bus for an hour
Yeah,
before school, and then you're on the bus an hour
yeah.
after. So you're not just gone 8 hours a day, you're gone 10 hours a day,
Mhm.
5 days a week.
Wow.
And then if you've got any extracurricular activities, then you're doing. When do people have time to have relationships with their
Right.
families? You
Yeah,
know,
no, I know, there's just not time.
no,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
just cannot understand.
yeah,
And then the young people today are just so stressed,
they are.
and they've
Yes.
got anxiety and all of these things. And I'm like, teens especially need a
Yeah,
lot of rest. They need a
they
lot of
do.
sleep.
They do.
So
Yeah.
I it just we never had a set like bedtime or
Mhm.
get up in the morning time as much as I would have liked to. My husband's just not like
Yeah,
that. And I think it was good
yeah,
physically for them. They were able to get the amount of sleep that they needed,
mhm.
and get that rest. It
Yeah.
just
I
you
think they're not sleeping enough and they're on electronics too much, which changes their brain space. I mean, there's a lot of reasons. The research is the anxiety amongst our youth since 2020 has just skyrocketed. And it's really a problem in higher ed. And if you think about kids going to college now, they really missed a big chunk of their high school years due to COVID. So I think like as homeschoolers, like somebody asked us, like, what changed in your life during COVID? And I'm like, actually, not really much. My husband got to work from home every day instead of just a couple days a week. My son came home from college that semester, which we'd missed him anyway. It was a bonus in our life. But other than that, we did the same thing. You know what I
yeah.
mean? And so it wasn't like we kept studying, like there was no disruption in that piece of it. But I think for a lot of kids, it's been very disruptive and it's been hard to kind of regroup. And so the stats coming out of colleges and and just the Department of Ed with our test scores and stuff. They're even worse than ever. I read yesterday that a valedictorian at a school is suing her school because she's illiterate. She was the valedictorian and she cannot read or write. So she's literally suing her school, which, I
Oh,
mean, on the one hand, good for her. And on the other
yeah,
hand, how stinking tragic. Like,
that is. That
well, she's
is.
going to probably be a millionaire without the ability to read the contract of the lawyer or whatever. I mean, like, it's just so ridiculous. But anyway, yeah.
Yeah, there's so much. And of course, everybody always wants to know, what about socialization?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I love this question. Let's do it. Gina Suarez wrote an article years ago in the Old Schoolhouse magazine saying I was raised by wolves.
I don't remember that.
I loved it. And it was all about how she went to public school and some of the stresses and things that she experienced in public school. And I don't remember all the details of her life, but in my life, I saw someone get sexually assaulted on the school bus. My arm was broken on the school bus. I saw kids being recklessly bullied. I mean, there was some other great stuff at school. I mean, but there are some things that stood out to me. I mean, um, the drinking, the smoking pot, during school hours, et cetera, et cetera. And I think really everybody's socialized, whether you're a public school or homeschool or raised by wolves. If you're in a social group, you're socialized to that social group. So you're socialized to a wolf pack, your family, or a public institution. And I think the real question behind that socialization question isn't, are your kids socialized? It's, I'm really worried because your kids aren't socialized to the greater culture. And are they going to fit into the greater culture? Are they going to just be these crazy outlier people that are concerning? And I think that's the real question behind that socialization concern, because everybody has those stories from public school. And it doesn't color everything. I mean, like I said, there was some great experiences I had in public school, and I went to a private school for a couple years, but everybody has those both and stories. My kids don't have those stories from being homeschooled. They did not witness sexual assault or abuse or kids getting bullied or any of that other kind of stuff. I mean, it wasn't perfect. Let me just put that out there. Like, we're
Yeah.
all human. We're all human.
Yes.
Um, but I do think, really, I think people are concerned, like, are you really going to be acculturated? And I think since 2022, where everybody's realizing, I don't have to go back to public school. My kids are getting a better education and they're calmer and they're eating and sleeping and they're not on that stomach drug, or they're off the antidepressants, or they're not cheating on the AP exams, or all the myriad of things that we hear from kids all the time, or the reasons the parents are calling us to pull their kids from public school all the time. So yeah, the parents are realizing we can socialize and acculturate our kids to a different standard than this public institution. Now, I also want to throw out another stat. If your kid has a cell phone, the stats are in, they have more in common with a teen in China than they do with you in their home, because a cell phone is like Walmart. It's the great equalizer. And so if you have a generation gap or problem in your home, it's probably the phone. And so really, parents need to read Glow Kids. They need to do some real deep research on what the phone is doing to your kids' brains, because here's another interesting thing. They're using games, digital phone kind of technology on burn wards, and it's having as much of an effect as opium. That's
Mhm.
concerning
Mhm.
because um, people die on burn wards from the pain. They die from the burns, but they die at just the same fast amount from the pain. And what this does to your brain is it acts like opium. So it gives you these constant dopamine hits, which is why burn people can use digital stuff to manage the pain as much as opium. But if you think about a normal kid who's not struggling with pain and they're getting those constant dopamine hits, it's flooding their body with dopamine. This is not good. It's not
Right.
normal and it's not healthy. It's really, really not healthy. So it's creating these addictive patterns in your kids' brains, blah, blah, blah. I mean, go read Glow Kids. It's eye-opening and a little concerning.
Yeah.
So I mean, I
Yeah.
don't know why I went on that bunny trail, but was it?
It's fortuitous. It really is, because I've been doing an email series here lately on frequencies and how they affect your health.
Okay.
And, there are good frequencies
Yes.
for
Yes.
us, grounding, walking around
Yeah.
barefoot in the dirt, bells,
Yes.
acoustic music instruments, things
Yeah.
like that. And then there are bad frequencies
Yeah.
that are not good for you. And trying to fill your life up with more of the good frequencies,
Yeah.
laughter, reading out
Yeah.
loud, music,
Yes.
things like that, instead of the bad
Yeah.
frequencies. And yeah, I did not allow our children on
Mhm.
online
Yeah.
much of anything as far as computers or anything,
Mhm.
until they were older high school, if not
Yeah.
graduated.
Mhm.
They learn it so fast
Oh
that
my
there
gosh,
is
it's not even
no
funny.
reason.
Yeah.
I mean, all of the preschools out here,
Yeah.
they have iPads. Those children are
Um,
carrying around iPads all their school day,
yeah.
preschoolers,
Wow.
and it horrifies me.
Mhm.
Um, but it's also, I absolutely believe it's an agenda.
Yeah.
It's absolutely an
Mhm.
agenda. And I it yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
I 100% agree
Yeah.
with that. That's
Yeah.
somebody needed to hear that. Take it to heart.
Yeah. Yeah. Read the book. It's so helpful to really understand. Your kids' brains are not fully developed yet. And so they need fresh air and water and grounding and jumping on trampolines and listening to birds and,
Yes.
splashing through mud puddles and all the things that used to be normal part of childhood. And the other thing, you go by these neighborhoods with these huge playscapes in the back that cost $4,000 to $5,000 and you never see a kid on them. I
Mm-mm.
mean, I'm like, holy buckets, that's a lot of investment for a couple hours of play throughout the course of a kid's childhood because
Right.
literally you never see a kid on them. But
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
And they're just as happy. It's like a toddler is just as
Mhm.
I our youngest grandchild just
Mhm.
had his first birthday, and
Oh,
he didn't get a gift from us.
yeah.
Because, first of all, he's not gonna remember that,
Yeah.
and second of all, Mima is too slow getting her sewing done. And then he is happy with a box.
Yes,
Hand him
exactly.
a box, and
I love
he's
it.
thrilled to pieces and will keep himself
Yeah.
occupied.
Yeah.
He wants to go for a walk, he wants to play with a
I love
box,
it. Yes.
the children would rather climb trees and, yeah, get them some seeds and
Yeah.
give them a patch of ground or a pot with
Yeah.
some potting soil and have them grow some
Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
That's so much more important.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily have anything against sports, but I feel like music and art
Mhm.
is so much more beneficial in the long run
Mhm.
than
Mhm.
the lifelong injuries
Mhm.
you're
Yeah.
likely going to end up with the sports.
Mhm.
And you can learn, sportsmanship and things like that
Mhm. For
in a
sure.
debate team as
Yeah.
easily as
Yeah.
on, if not easier.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. I
Well, I
think we
think
are so on the same page.
oh, yeah. I think it's interesting in 2020, where did everybody go? They turned to the arts. They listened to people read Shakespeare on YouTube. They listen to Yo-Yo Ma plays violin. They watch the Met has, free concerts online. I mean, everybody went online to listen and to hear and to see art because that's what really feeds our soul. And when things get tough, you're probably, I know a few mathy people who might work a math problem to calm themselves down, but most people are really going to go to the arts, right? Because
Right.
they're going to go seek out that beauty and the truth because that's what we need in times of trouble or
Yeah.
whatever. So,
Well,
yeah.
I remember one of our older ladies out here one time talking about she had a model of the shack that her family had lived in during the Dust Bowl.
Mm. Wow.
And she, just glistening eyes talking about it was a hard life, but it was a good life. And
Oh,
I still remember just the shine in her eyes and her telling about that. And it's interesting, there's people that are looking into that history and stuff
yeah.
now. And my family lived through that.
Mm.
And we've been going through something similar over the last 20 years. And just to say, yeah, I you don't have to have all the things.
Yeah.
You don't have to have all the things. And it's nice to have a dependable vehicle. I never know which one's going to start whenever I go to go somewhere. We have several to
Yeah.
choose from. One of them will hopefully start for me. It's fine
Yeah.
because and thankfully I'm in a rural area where, and even if I'm in the city, it's different. It's not any different for me. If I end up stopped on the side of the road because something broke down, I'm
Mhm.
going to have visitors. Somebody's going to stop and see how I'm doing. Do you need help?
Yeah.
And I don't live in a fear
Yeah.
of that situation. And I think we need to get back to that mindset.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
There's so many classes and
Mhm.
coaching and things going on
Yeah.
online nowadays to help us change our mindset.
Yeah.
And I think that we need to go back to that old
Mhm.
fashioned back to basics mindset on
Yeah.
so many things, whether you homeschool, whether you homestead,
Yeah.
any of those things, it's the mindset.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think you see that trend among a lot of young people. I say kids because I have
They're youngsters.
some of
That's
my
what I've
kids
been
are like
calling them.
almost 40, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? So, but I do think a generation or two younger than I am, they're really seeking out that simple life. They're doing the starter with sourdough. They're trying to figure out how to do the homesteading thing and getting chickens and that kind of thing, and really seeing, can we live more simply? And so I think there is, like, deep calls to deep, and the heart things are always going to pull on us and say, okay, come this way. There's a lot. And even in America, I mean, I think it's an interesting time politically. I won't go too much into politics, but if Doge is even sort of accurate, some of the overspending has been pretty egregious. And even with our tax dollars getting wasted like that, we all still live pretty well. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Yeah.
Like, I'm thinking, we live pretty well with, like, how much better could we live?
Yeah,
Like,
well,
fully
and during
focused.
the 2020s, so many of the young people, either tried to move out
Yeah.
into the country, tried to
Mm.
homestead, tried to go to tiny house living.
Yes.
The whole cottage core thing went
Yes.
through on the
Yep.
internet and stuff. And I'm like, oh my goodness, these are my people.
Yeah.
And they're young. This is
Yes.
amazing. And
Yeah.
they just want to know how to make beans and rice. I've
Yes.
been trying to tell our local home extension that for years. And they're
Oh,
like, no, they just want to know how to make 100,000 things out of cake mix. And I'm like, no, because
oh,
they're
I don't think
tired of the
so.
ingredients in the cake
Exactly.
mix.
They're looking at that yellow dye going, "I don't think so."
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
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 I
Well, it's
and
an exciting time. I think alternative ways of thinking and living are in style right now, and I love that because you and I have been on the outside of the style for a while, maybe doing the unschooling or homeschooling for years back, and some of the homesteading. You're living it. We have a little acreage, and we're like, yeah, we're not really homesteaders. But I do think, it's nice to kind of like find our people. And the internet has made it so easy to do that, like with social media and things like that. And so it's a good time to be part of some of those movements because really people are seeking out health. And I think everybody knows if you don't have your health, you don't really have anything, right? Like Princess
yeah.
Bride nailed it.
Yeah.
And so they're really figuring out, how can we be healthy physically? How can we be healthy academically? How can we be healthy spiritually? And who are our people? Because it's so much, two are better than one. And if you can find somebody who, speaks to your heart language, you're not so alone. You can get a lot more done. You can go farther
Mhm.
faster. So,
Yes. Yes.
yeah,
Community. Community.
exactly. Yeah.
Exactly. Well, I love the idea of your school because there's so many people that are looking into homeschooling now,
Yeah.
and I remember a a family came over to visit us and handed me this pile of papers stapled together, and I had to write letters to each one of the places and sometimes send $1 or 2 to get a catalog.
Oh my gosh, wow, I remember those days. Yes,
Yes.
yes,
Yeah, and we would just copy those pages and you'd give them
yes.
to the next
The
person that was
newsletters,
interested.
yes.
Yes. And, it was so much different before the internet. And now they've got so much at their fingertips that they're
Mhm.
completely overwhelmed at
Yeah.
everything that's
It's a
available.
different world, yes.
Yes. So if you don't know where to start, of
Yeah,
course, I've got stuff in my community and you guys can come visit that, of course. But definitely check out Lisa's
yeah, True North
stuff.
Academy. We
Yes.
do free academic advising. We have that available all the
Nice.
time. We'll give you a 2-year free academic plan, or you can meet for 15 minutes with an advisor, and it's free to you. I mean, we'll tell you about classes that we offer that might be a good fit, but it's really not a sales pitch. We look at who your student is, where you think they'll go after graduation, and how to get them there with your resources. So I did want to go back and revisit. Our family's been pretty low tech. Before we started this, I had to call my daughter up here to get my video to work.
Thank
So
the Lord for
true
children who
confession.
know tech.
Okay. So I want to just disclaimer, but I went back to work. About 10 years ago, 15, 12, a while ago, and I still had 2 kids that I was homeschooling. And the only way I could work and homeschool my kids, and they were in so deep at that point, they were like, they knew what it was all about. They're like, we're not going to public school, is to outsource. And so that is kind of how True North came about, is our need for outsourcing to subject matter experts in a way that allowed us to personalize our kids' education. So my daughter graduated fluent in Hebrew. She's conversant in Spanish, and she can hold her own in German because she had this crazy goal to become a polyglot. And so because we're homeschooling, we were able to connect with a rabbi in Israel, connect with a trilingual teacher in Mexico, and et cetera, et cetera. And my kids have also learned from somebody who worked in high levels of public policy and was on CNN. So they've read Senate briefs from the 80s on, and they can talk about history and law and politics really in a positive and encouraging way with history to back it up.
Mhm.
And my daughter can do it in a couple different languages, which blows me away.
That's amazing.
So that is the beauty of homeschooling, is that you can
Mhm.
outsource and you can have subject matter experts come to your home via Zoom. There's never been a better time because
Really,
yeah, it is just so
absolutely.
great. It can still be as personalized as you need it to be, and it can still take your kid where God has called them to be. It's not lockstep. It doesn't have to be, you're just a number. It can still be.
And this is proof you can work and homeschool because we
Yes.
all know that economy. The
Yeah.
Lord called me into full-time work
Yeah.
during the 2020 stuff.
Yeah.
And we still had some that were homeschooling. We graduated 2 during that time, and we had another that was still
Yeah.
homeschooling. And we were able to do it. First of all,
Yeah.
homeschooling doesn't take as much time,
Yes,
you know.
exactly. Just a
And
little, yeah. Yeah.
yeah. And your children, once they realize that they can,
Mhm.
do so much of it themselves, then they'll just take off.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
our goal is to teach them to love to learn.
Exactly. That is the number one skill your kids need. We're in the fourth industrial revolution. And listen, it's a time of great disruption. It's not going to be a 10 or 15-year industrial revolution. It's going to be a 20 to 50-year time of change because the rate at which tech is changing. So if your kids love to learn, they're going to be set apart.
Mhm.
Seriously, and honestly, I do think like if they can have a decent conversation and like what we're having here, they are going to be the front runners on the evangelism team
Oh,
because
yes.
kids can't chat. And so anybody who can talk to somebody else and show interest, they're ahead of the game.
Our youngest, she was the one that got on the devices earlier than
Yeah,
anybody. She's an artist, and in
yeah,
order to put her art out
yes,
there and make it available, Instagram was the
yeah,
thing.
yeah,
And, they know I can pick up their phone at any point in time
yes,
or look up their device or their diary or whatever at any point in time. We might have conversations, right? I'm always impressed
yeah,
because she's talking to people all over the world of
yeah,
all different walks of life, all different beliefs,
yeah,
and she's slipping in the
yeah,
process just naturally
yeah.
about the Lord.
I love it.
you
I
know?
love
And
it. I love it.
I
Okay, I want to share this term with your viewers. It's called the global gig economy. And your daughter is working and living in the global, talking to people around the world, gig. She's doing an art gig economy. So she's making money. And that is the world our kids are going to live and work in. So
yes,
they have to know how to pivot. They have to know how to have entrepreneurial skills. They have to be autodidacts. They have to have a passion for
yes,
learning.
and
Um,
be resilient.
yeah, and be resilient. So
Mhm.
kudos to your daughter. I love that story so much. That's exciting. That's exciting stuff. Like you raise your kid and I hope they're going to be okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It was the constant prayer of, Lord, I'm doing the best I can, but you take them because
Yeah,
I knew I was failing on
yeah.
my end,
Aw, yeah,
and just hand it over to him. It's
yeah,
up to you to take over the rest of it.
yeah.
And he has been so faithful.
I love
I
it.
think we run into more problems and we end up being more overwhelmed and having more issues
Yeah,
when we try to keep control of things.
for sure. Yeah, for sure. Yes. Do you have time? Can I share one more thing?
Absolutely.
Okay, so at True North, we just stood up a program in the fall where kids were partnering with 3 accredited colleges. Kids can earn a bachelor's degree in high school.
Nice.
And I want to share that because talking about the global gig economy and just saying, I don't know if I'm doing enough. Like, where are the resources my kids need? Does everybody need a college degree? No. And especially now, because the fourth industrial revolution, I keep using this term, but it's a great way to just like wrap up everything that's happening. The institutions that we've grown to trust, like education, government, healthcare,
Does anybody
they're
use them anymore?
yeah, I don't know. See, we're in a time of great disruption, right?
Uh-huh.
Like it's just all in flux. And
Exactly.
so, really, does your kid need a college degree? No. But if they can get one very inexpensively and save time and energy, especially if they're going to go into a STEM field or into a graduate program, getting it done faster is better. And they're going to learn skills doing that program they might not have otherwise. So if any of your listeners are looking for a really great way to hack college, and I don't love that term, tell them to call me.
Yeah,
We got a
yeah,
great program for them. And it's a real
absolutely.
thing. Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean, that's the
absolutely.
exciting
Then they
part of it.
can, I know some of the tech schools have got programs for the high schoolers where
Yes.
you can end up graduating with, a tech
Yeah.
certificate in welding or carpentry or
Yes.
whatever. Absolutely. If
Yeah.
you have that available,
Yeah.
and that works for your family, absolutely do that because it's just one more check mark on
Yeah.
their resume. It's not
Exactly.
necessary. It's not
Yes.
necessary. There's so many things that they can do without
Yeah.
it. But if they have it, then it's not something that they have to explain
Yeah.
during a job
Yeah, or
interview
ever
or
feel like,
anything
"Oh,
like
I don't
that.
have that." Yeah.
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 Yeah. Yeah, there's so many opportunities for kids right now. And just like your daughter, she started her own business online. Wow.
I've
That's just
encouraged
amazing.
all of ours to do that. I mean,
Yeah.
my husband has always had his own business,
Yeah.
and I've always run a business online since
Yeah.
we've had internet. So this is just something that's normal for us. And
Yeah.
I feel like it's biblical. If
Yeah.
we go back to the Bible
Yeah.
and we see how God encouraged people to live, it
Yes.
was home based business, it was
Mhm.
agriculture, it
Yeah.
was, carpentry like
Yeah.
Joseph, whatever. So, not that it's bad to work for somebody else,
Yeah.
but if you can contract
Mhm.
and have your own business, you have so much more control
Yes.
over what you're doing and how you're doing, so much more flexibility, the
Yeah.
ability to better make the boundaries, set the
Mhm.
boundaries that you
Yeah.
need to set.
Yeah.
And so many people have a problem with that today.
Mhm.
Again, we end up completely overwhelmed
Yeah.
because we become people pleasers
Yeah.
instead of realizing that God gave us boundaries.
Yes.
Part of that old law that people try to complain
Yeah.
about is like,
Yeah.
no, this was God saying you can set a boundary.
Yeah.
If you're having your monthly cycle, you
Yeah.
can rest. You
Right.
know,
And that's
it's
so practical.
it is. It absolutely is. You get to do it,
Yeah.
not you have to.
Exactly. Yes, I love it.
Oh my goodness. This has been wonderful. I
So fun to
so
talk to you.
appreciate you.
Yeah.
These are the types of things that we do try to cover in the Prairie Dust Trail magazine. And the spring magazine will be out. end of April. So if you haven't subscribed yet, definitely, people. But yeah, this is the kind of stuff that we try to cover. If you're trying to learn new things, and we've got recipes and just all the stuff. Everyone is packed so full that I have trouble uploading it because everything wants to complain about the size of the magazine. And I'm like, but they need all of this.
Yeah.
So, before we go, is there any last thing that you would like to leave everybody with?
Well, I just want to say, whatever you are called to do, just do it with your whole heart. And a lot of times God gives us things to do that no one else understands. But there's this meme that says, doesn't matter. It's not a group project. It's your project. So what is the project God has for your life and for your family? And then jump in with both feet. And you don't have to worry about the outcomes. That's not your pay grade. Your goal and your job is just to be faithful. And I say just to be faithful because it's supposed to be easy. And we all know it's not. But don't give up, don't lose heart. All these little bunny trails, homemaking, homesteading, homeschooling, home health, they're all hard, but they're all worthy. So be of good cheer and take heart. Don't lose heart.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks for having me. This has been so fun.
It has been. It has been.